All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We are going to start with this session, and I'll start by introducing Ateeb, who's going to pin his video here. I think Ateeb will do a good job of introducing himself, but just to give you all an overview, Ateeb is a physical therapist. He's from DY, and he has worked with a lot of sportsmen, and his specialty is working with athletes to train and help them with their strength and conditioning, rehab, prehab, post-injury, off-season, training, and he's done a lot of good work. And he is probably one of the most up-to-date therapists that I know of, because he's very interested in exploring fields outside of traditional rehab. So I think he's a wonderful person to talk about today's topic. Um, just clarification, Ateeb has not done this before. And in fact, none of us have really done webinars of this sort before. So we apologize in advance if there are some glitches, technological or otherwise. And in case we can't answer all of your questions, again, apologies in advance. If you have questions, please put them up on the chat group and we'll try to, go forward and try to answer all of your questions. So a few ground rules before we start. Please be respectful in your chat. I'm sure I don't need to say it, but I'm still going to. If you have questions at any time, instead of using your speakers and interrupting the speaker, I'd really like it if you can put it up in chat. Like I said, you can send it to me privately or to everyone. Initially, we will have Ateeb just talk a little bit about strength and conditioning. What is it? How exactly can PTs get into that field? What are the opportunities? What are the different certifications and resources available for PTs? And I think he's a brilliant person to talk to about that. And then we can open up the session for open question answers. So don't stop yourself from asking questions. Please do that because I think it'll be much better if it's interactive. And yeah, I think that's about it from my side. So I'm just gonna pin Ateeb's video. Please let me know if everyone can see it. Yeah, I think everyone can. So Ateeb, over to you.
Yes. Can you hear me all?
I think you might want to just increase your volume a little. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, yes. Can you hear me always?
Yes, I can. Yeah, just go ahead.
Really fine. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I'll just start with introducing myself. So how I got into the strength and conditioning aspect of it. So, when I used to, sort of not observe, intern with a team. So, like, our job as a physical therapist is to, was just to prehab and rehab. Then what's next? So there it got running in my mind, like how can I help my athlete getting more fit to the ground? So basically being a sports physiotherapist, it's all about like getting your athlete back return to sport. Okay. So like we our role is just till the prehab and rehab. Yeah. Can you hear me all?
Yes, yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there it got into my head like, okay, I need to explore more in this field. So I ended up doing CSCS, so that's Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist from NSCA, and later on I did Australian Strength and Conditioning Association Level 2. So that's how I got into this field, and then later on I worked with Saurabh Ranji team, and I recently got selected for the Mumbai Indians, but Corona itself spilled it over, so can't help with that. That's how I got into it until here.
I think Ateeb's credentials speak for themselves. Like to achieve what he has at this age is pretty remarkable. So I think he's a good resource person to stay in touch with, and he's very helpful. So in case you guys have any questions, Ateeb has agreed to be contacted by any one of you all with your private questions or personal questions that you have. So I think he's always available for that. So, Ateeb, can you tell us a little bit about strength and conditioning and what exactly is a certification in that and what does that entail?
Mhm. Yeah, strength and conditioning is more about like getting your player fit. See, everyone wants to be the number one, so that's where SNC comes into play. Like if your athlete is fit, he can perform well. So that's the basic ideology of SNC. And from where to do that, personally, I would suggest to do it from NSCA. That's National Strength and Conditioning Academy. So it has its own CSCS. So there, the most important part is the eligibility requirements. You need to have a bachelorate degree or any grant or any from like accredited institution and a CPCR. Then the most difficult part to pass the exam. That's the most difficult part. And you have all the modules. Why I would prefer NSCA is that you have a sports psychology as well in the module. So like you have all the basic human kinesiology to the sports biomechanics, sports psychology, sports nutrition, then a program design, then all the recent advances in your flexibility, stretching, or speed training, power training, all the parameters like from the body composition till your, even they have some aspects of rehab as well. So you can modify your rehab in like if you're good in terms of strength and conditioning. So you aren't you're not sticking to all those old school exercises. The most of the part is like in the closed chain kinetic movement patterns. So there where we are working around and giving you insights about all the sports nutrition. So you can help your athlete recover and perform well.
So, Ateeb, can you tell us a little bit about the prerequisites? So, can anyone become a strength and conditioning coach? Do you have to be a
Yeah.
physical therapist? Or
Yes. Any degree, any graduate degree, bachelor degree, or higher granted by an accredited institution like ACSM, ACE, yeah, or should be a current licensed physical therapist, or be it say an athletic trainer, but from a accredited institution, most from the States and UK, and the basic CPCRs and practical experience coaching for the sport population. That's 250 hours.
okay, so how do you document that 250 hours? Do you have to get some sort of letter from someone, or how do you document
If
it?
you are a UG, then you don't need to like 250 hours. You can just directly apply for that.
Okay, so if you're a PT with like a BPT, you don't really have to
Yeah,
worry about that. Okay,
yeah.
so that's great.
But
And
you got to renew it after every 2 years.
okay, so you need to continuously update
Mhm.
your experience.
Yeah, and the best part is that you get a US reps registration and identification.
Okay, that's great. I think
Registry, yeah, that's US Registry of Exercise Professionals. So you have a license to work there in states or like be it anywhere.
okay, great. So before we go into the details of that, I think Neha has a good question. What are the
Mhm.
basic components of strength and conditioning?
So yeah, you have your strength, flexibility, speed, power, your endurance. So you have all those components together. Like you have the endurance and sport strength training going hand in hand. Just giving an example, like if I am a cricketer, so I need based on the exercise physiology, so the sports physiology. So I'll just design a program according to that. So I'll keep in mind that I have to be on the ground for just your test match. I have to be on there the whole day. So my strength and conditioning program should revolve around that conditions.
Okay, so we have different components, and then based on the sport, you need to fix up that component. Can you give us an
Yeah.
example of an athlete and a program that you
Yeah. So recently I worked with Johan Blake, who was recently in India. So he's the second fastest man on earth. So I got a chance to train him once. So that's a big opportunity for me. But so how we designed, so he was there in India. So we had the power component with us. Just giving you an example, like we had all those plyometric drills from like the sledge push and everything. And like for the squats, we took the eccentric component, the tempos. We had set the tempos very high, like for 6 seconds. And while in the concentric movement, we just used to do all the force and power movements. Basically, your power is equal, like if you get into the physics, your force into velocity, and then you have force equal mass into acceleration. So if you combine all those components, you can like make a good program. So that was a power session with him. Then you have the other session as a metabolic conditioning. There you have more of the sprint drills and all that, fixing the biomechanics, and so you focus more on. So you have to so we have meso micro cycles, off season, on season. So we have to keep everything in mind.
So basically, it's a comprehensive program.
Yeah,
it's like a multi.
and it depends like coach to coach.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I think that's an individualistic program, but it has to be comprehensive, and you have to have a
Comprehensive.
approach.
So if we are looking to just enhance the performance, so we might consider the body composition as well. So for that also we have a separate cycle.
Okay, so it seems like there are lots of components there.
Yeah, there are almost 20 components, to be honest. We have a very good book about that, NSCA Guide to Program Design, and I highly recommend NSCA Tests and Assessment. We have that in the library. So I had Unnati ma'am was very helpful with this thing. So she had got all the books in the library.
Can you repeat it once? Hello? Can you repeat it once? Sorry.
Yeah, so we have NSCA Tests and Assessment, a book. And NSCA Guide to Program Design. So you can design your own program.
Okay, so I think.
And you have Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. We have all the resources in the library. Yeah.
Okay, so Ateeb, we are getting questions coming in. One of the first ones is it a sports-specific strength and conditioning course that you have done personally, or is it like a condition-specific? I think you did answer this, but if you can just reiterate.
It depends on what population you're going to target. See, for me, both the populations are in my hand. So I target sports as well as general fitness as well, because general fitness is where 70% of the commercial aspect is there. See, like just going into sports, only a high-end club can pay you for this being a strength and conditioning coach.
Okay, all right. So
you can just being a physio and being a strength and you can just make a general fitness program as well for him. Just basic strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning is the basic word. If I am just a recreational athlete and I want to be fit, so I'll go to the same process, but I won't go into the progression of the professional athlete.
okay.
I'll restrict myself to some point.
Okay, so it's more about the differentiation between a general fitness versus a sports, like a sport thing, if I'm not mistaken. And that brings us to another question by Aarti, which is actually pretty good. How different is it from agility training?
That agility training, like just agility training, or just she's asking about strength and conditioning, like the specific question?
So I believe the question is how.
It is the part of as a strength and conditioning program, but you need to have everything in the program. It's like all in one. Your stability should go with balance, so you need to have balance training. Then you need to have power. Then you need to have endurance. It depends on the sport to sport. For agility, like we might consider that for football, basketball, but at the same time we need power. At the same time we need endurance. So it's like all the components going hand in hand. So that's how you design a program. You keep the conditioning and the recent conditioning of a player. Then you jot down seasons, like if it's the in season, off season, peak season. So that's how you go and design a program. So like you have to consider all those components while designing a program.
Okay, and I think that's a good segue into
nutrition as well.
I think it's a good segue into Neha's question about periodization in sports, off-season, pre-season, mid-season. That is a very extensive topic, I believe.
Yeah, we at least need an hour to talk about that, but we'll just make it cut short. So it depends on the type of a player, first of all. He's an elite amateur professional. So depending on that, if he just an beginner, so I'll have to work more on the exercise technique and all those basic stuff. If he's in professional, then we can just give him a proper program. Like the in season, we might consider just giving an example for any of those strength athletes using powerlifting. So we'll progress more on the like the progressive overload component of this, and that how we'll just work on that. That expect more. The isolation work would be less.
Okay, so more of group, like large group exercise, muscle exercises.
Yeah, but honestly, periodization is a very old school term actually. So if you are working with a team, like most of the players, they are playing some or the other league. So they are always in the in season. So you have to make micro cycles of 4 weeks. So you have a very short time span. So I've seen and gone through all those books, periodization, but that doesn't apply to the real life because your player is, if he's playing in India for IPL, for suppose, and he'll be playing in some other county cricket, he's playing for his national team, then he's playing for some other league. So he's in his peak season, and there is nothing as such off season. You have to keep the conditioning. You have to work around that. Your nutrition and your strength and conditioning should go hand in hand, and that's another term. It's overuse. So we have to check like they don't get injured as well.
Okay, so I think the question is well answered, but I believe that's from an Indian perspective for specifically for cricket or a sport which is got something or the other going on throughout the year. But if you're looking at say like the football season, uh, you have like winter breaks, you have pre-season training, all of those. So how is it different, and how would you like what are the priorities in a pre-season versus a post?
Pre-season, I will focus more on the strength and hypertrophy part, and at the same time, I'll just start working on the endurance, and then later on, I'll progress more on the sprintings and on the higher repetitions, sort of that.
Okay, I think that should give us some insight into Neha's question. Okay, so getting back the strength and conditioning specifically, um, where did you do your certification from? What was the certificate? Just your particular thing. What resources did you need? How did you access them? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the first of all, I started with NSCA. So like I had a PDF that you have given me in the book section. So apparently I found it from there. And I started studying and later I enrolled for the exam. So that was the only book I referred. But later on I got to know like we have other stuff as well. Like all such books, like the tests and assessments. Then you have all the guide to program design, essentials of strength and conditioning. So so doing that, then I went for Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. So you have level 1, level 2, and level 3. So if you are a CSCS, you can just skip the level 1, or just being an undergraduate, you can skip the level 1. In the level 2, you have all the prerequisites, like you need to hold a current ASCA level 1 or any others uh, conditioning certification, and you need to have 100 hours of state level or above athlete coaching experience for the level 2, and then you can apply for that. And so I just did my level 2, and for the level 3 you need to travel down to Australia, and you need to like it's quite expensive. It's $2,500 for a week, and you get a profit, and you are eligible to work with their professional team. You get the international exposure like the Australian Test cricket team or some county cricket teams or any other sport.
So that seems like a pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, it's very pretty comprehensive, but they have divided into 3 levels. So, and it's quite expensive as well. So it's like a proper degree course. Like you just ending up spending around 7-8 lakhs. The
Wow.
travel and everything. But this certification is quite good. I would prefer doing that. If you are that serious getting into SNC, then only.
Okay, so someone, let's take a step back. Maybe that's a little more advanced for most of the people.
Yeah,
You did not really know much about SNC, and if
SNC.
you've done your reading, suppose you start doing your reading, and then you find out, okay, I want to work with a sports team, and I want to use, or I want to go into strength and conditioning, and you explore that as an option. Uh, what certification or what sort of path do you recommend taking for someone who's just started off?
See, being from like the physical therapist fraternity, I would very strongly suggest to do NSCA-CSCS. So you have the sports psychology, nutrition, and all the other advanced, and it's a gold standard. Like ACE+ISSN being the gold standard, so NSCA is the gold standard, and you have the memberships. Then you have the access to the journals of strength and conditioning. That's the most important part.
So you definitely recommend the NSCA's.
NSCA, and it's quite cheap as well. It's just $475.
Okay.
Then
So
you have NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine. There you have performance enhancement specialist, but that's for $1,000. But that's not worth doing that. It's just a course. You just doing it online modules. See, one thing you shouldn't fall for is like there's a difference between courses and a certification course. In a certification course, you need to pass an exam. You need to pass the eligibility criteria. And passing CSCS is quite difficult. The pass rate is very low, and they have lot of, it's divided into two parts. Like you have a scientific foundation part, there you have 80 scored and 15 non-scored MCQs, and there's a practical applied part. So you have the video analysis, you need to break down the movements, biomechanics. So that I have 110 scored questions and 15 non-scored questions. So there was a survey like you need 56% to pass. So that's quite difficult. I had few good physiotherapists flunking the exam. I had, as we had earlier, from reputed teams, from the IPL to everyone. Most of the good physios have flunked because there's one thing about strength and conditioning is like tell show do. You should be able to deadlift 100 kgs if you are getting into the raw strength and conditioning. If you want yourself to be called as a strength coach, you need to preach what you teach here in SNC.
I think they're a little selective about who they let into their little circle, uh,
Yeah,
which is, I have my opinions about that, but that's okay. Uh,
yeah.
Specifically about yes,
About being a strength coach, you need to be very commanding and like you have to get a job done. Your athlete should listen to you at the end. So you have a comprehensive program.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit more about the CSCS? Because I know that there are, I know it's a very reputed certification in terms of the industry itself, because a lot
Yeah,
of people want to, when they think about strength and conditioning, the first thing that they look for is, are you a certified specialist in strength and conditioning? So can you tell us a little bit about just the certified strength and conditioning specialist certification?
okay, yeah. So just give me a second. Yeah. So there are three, four domains. You have exercise science, then you have sports psychology and nutrition in the course itself. So it's a very comprehensive plan. Then, yeah. So you have exercise technique, program design, organization, and administration. And the most important part, testing and evaluation. You need to have a good, and the best part about this thing is that you don't need to have all those fancy gyms or machines. You can do it like all the basic assessments. We just call it yo-yo intermittent test, but nobody actually ever found out what exactly it is. It's so simple. You can just, and one more thing is that there's a purposely all the international sporting events they have kept so that you can change the values as well of all these tests. See, if Rohit Sharma is performing well, I can definitely change his yo-yo testing numbers. either is fit or not. So it's very biased testing. So it depends person to person and with the federations. But testing and evaluation is something like we physio should know in and out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Satyajit's question applies here. So if you apply for the CSCS from NSCA course, do you
Mm-hmm.
like what can you take us to the process? So what are the prerequisites? Like I think you've already explained that.
Yeah.
What is
We
the
need to have just your UG degree
Mhm.
and your CPCR. And I suggest you to like anyone who is opting for this to get it done from AHA, American Heart Association.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I second that because I think that's recognized by almost all the
Hmm.
associations. So try not to do it from some cheaper place. I think AHA has like $100 certification thing or something. I don't know.
We have one more thing, Red Cross Society, I guess.
Yeah, Red Cross is also there. Of course. So those are two CPCR.
That's good. That's pretty good.
I think DY offers some sort of, for the current students, I think you'll have to do a CPCR thing.
Yeah, but the validity and eligibility differs
Okay.
from all those certification, and AHA is quite recognized.
Okay. So you have the CPCR, you have your degrees and whatever. So what is the process of applying? Is it online? Do you have to like submit?
See, you get an online form, just have to fill all those, and have to fill all the details of your degrees, and you have to upload the pictures. And in a week or so, they get back to you with all the clearance, and then you can just you have to pay $475, and then you have to take an exam date. That is you're liable to take within a year. But I suggest you start studying first, and then you enroll for the exam. We have all the resources with us. If anyone wants to get, I can just share with them. We have the PDF, we have the books, Xerox, whatsoever feasible can help with that. So
Okay.
you need to schedule an appointment for the exam. So online registration. Then you have the test center location.
So is that an online test or do you have to appear in person?
Yeah. So once you register for the exam date, so you have 120 days to give the exam. Once you have been allotted.
Okay. And is it like you have to fix a date and then you can take the exam online or do you have to go to a center is what I'm asking?
No, we have to go to a center and then you have to get, it's a basically online exam, but you have to go to a center.
Okay. All right. And do they send you any books and journals free of cost, like Satyajit is asking, or do we have to buy
Yeah,
them?
they do have a free membership of 1 year for the general strength and conditioning.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah, I think
But that's something that it's only useful when you know the basics very well, and when you start working later down the line, like after working 10 to 5 years, then you can use those journals. I feel you can just get the knowledge, but how to apply exactly, you need to go to the process.
Yeah, I
Because
think that's a
I
good.
keep coming up and I keep reading each and every journal every day, but I don't happen to use that every day. Like the very few I have used in my practice life.
So I think the practicality of what you read is, I think we can definitely have another session on just that. So we're getting like a lot of questions coming in. But before we go into these questions, I just wanted to ask you, how does a CSCS, if you do the certification, what are the benefits of it? What does it give you as a professional?
See, you have a very strong resume first of all, and if you're a sports physiotherapist, be it cardio elective as well, so you have a very high chances of getting a job. And if you have extra credentials that equals, you can charge more. So you have many things to offer. That is one thing, and you keep studying, and you get into the loop. Like you have to recertify every 2 if you're just looking at the academics. So you have to keep renewing that every 2 years, so you keep giving some or the other exam, so you're always up to date with the industry standards. There are two things: once that you learn from your college, and once that's practically applicable, like we have been using that in a day-to-day life, like as being a strength and like a sports physiotherapist also.
So I believe it offers you professional benefits in terms of higher job opportunities, better.
Yeah, definitely it does. See, if I would have been just a sports physiotherapist and approaching Mumbai Indians, that could have been very difficult for me. Very much difficult for me because they already have a lot of good physios out there with good clinical experience. But just on the basis of strength and conditioning and nutrition, they considered me like I already had a job with them as an assistant SNC and physio. So we have the Abhi sir and Magi.
So you have greater job opportunities, not just focusing on like the PT aspect, but also as a strength and conditioning specialist. So there are jobs out there for in sports teams just for strength and conditioning specialists. Is that
Yeah,
what you're trying to say?
yeah, they do have a strength coach.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah, so
it, yeah, I think that's a good option for anyone who's interested in going down that path. So
yeah.
now I think we can start answering some of the questions. I think Satyajit's question has come up. Shouldn't tests be standardized for everyone, and shouldn't change the test depending on the players? I think Ateeb might not have clarified that point. I think he was mentioning more about the outcome of the test, that you can change the number of yo-yos instead of actually changing the yo-yo test itself. But Ateeb, can you clarify that?
See, we have other tests as well. If I want to be specific, I can take him on some treadmill and just put on some VO2 max. I have the exact figures, but the federation themselves they have a specific test, so we can just alter the readings.
So you choose the test based on the athlete's performance or the requirements of the particular sport, or how do you pick and choose an assessment? Uh,
Uh, Ethically, I would go with some like good tests, but like the Margheria and all those shuttle tests. But there is something called as federation politics. If you are a very good influential player, you have to do what they say, or the next day you're fired. And then others sit down after them and work on their fitness. So you have to be very diplomatically handling such things. Like you can't just go and go across and you can say no, no this player is not fit. You can't. So if I'm working in NSCA Bangalore and just come up saying like Hardik Pandya is not fit, then the next day I'm fired.
okay, I think yeah, that has got a lot to do with the way you portray your information, the communication channels that you have with your like with the sports people, how you
I've worked with Hardik Pandya very closely. I know he's not fit. He haven't passed any test. He haven't even appeared for the tests. He still has the back playing. Just because on his batting skills, hitting skills, he got back into the. And he has his own PR team that you could see him everywhere on the Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. He had his own photographers, cameramen on the ground. So that's a different thing you have to see work with. So we can't just say like we can use the standardized test. There are a lot of things that come into play. I'm being honest here, so I don't like. So I would have done other tests, like we have a lot of tests. We can get all those fancy machines in the world, pressure plate gate analysis. Then we can get wild performance is there. So if I put into the machines, you get exact figure, and on what basis I can say like he's fit, and that is a very influential player. Like he can just get me fired. So we have to be very specific.
So I think that's an intro into what is it like to actually work with people instead of changing things around.
We have to consider a lot of things while like even treating them or be like training them.
Yeah, well, that is an interesting thing, and I think this here would be a good point, like a good time to talk to someone who's working with sports teams or who has an interest. I think Vaishnavi just joined us. She can give her inputs because she's actually working with WALD, the one the tests
Yeah.
that Ateeb just mentioned. So I don't think Vaishnavi's video is on, so I can't really pin her. But Vaishnavi, can you hear us? Can you tell us a little bit about, actually the practical aspects of working in assessments?
Yes, yes, yes. What are we discussing again? I'm sorry, I joined in late. So what did I miss?
So we were just having a discussion on standardized testing in sports PT.
Okay.
And, what are the practical aspects of using those tests when you're actually working with a team and you're having to deal with egos and politics and all of those things?
Okay.
How do you deal with individuals and entire entities like clubs, etc.?
Okay. Okay. Right. So what I would like to add here is, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So since you mentioned world, I would say not just for I would say Indian settings, but even with respect to world settings, world is sort of a luxury right now because
Yeah.
it's providing you objective assessment. All right.
Mhm.
Objective assessment is where you're getting numbers in terms of your hamstring eccentric strength, which is with the NOT board, the human track system that assesses the entire movements, like maybe your squats or deadlift and things like that. So
Right.
that, then you have your force decks, which are giving you idea about your force distribution along the lower limb. And then finally there's the groin bar, which now has been modified also for using it for the rotator cuff. So they have renamed it as something else, which I don't remember, but yes. So even that way, I think it's a luxury. And only a few, like when I was there at their headquarters, I would be honest, they had this nice big whiteboard where they had enlisted their target companies or people they want to target around the world. And it included, BCCI, the Army Sports Institute, and the big names basically in the business. Okay, not the smaller gyms or things like that. So that way, I think Vault is for it to become a part of smaller clubs, it's quite a few years away, right? And so that is one aspect of it. Other, I think, Ateeb, like when I joined in, he was trying to explain how you could use modifications of all the tests for sports testing. I think the best way to do it is keep it specific. Keep it as specific as possible. You cannot ask, say, a swimmer to go for lower limb plyometrics or a vertical jump because it doesn't make sense. They have to be swimming related specific tests that you need to do. So that is the key. You need to be as specific to the sport. You need to be able to mimic the actions as much as possible because that is what they would be translating directly into their sport. You cannot consider an athlete fit that if he's done a vertical jump test, he's going to be okay playing contact sports. It is absolutely impractical. So even if I talk about the triage of tests that are given, standard tests, I think most of them are not specific. So here comes the expertise of a strength and conditioning coach, the medical team, the sports physiotherapist, who would know the game so well that they would know what are the exact demands. What is the ergogenesis? What are the aerobic, the anaerobic energy systems? How are you going to test them? What is going to be the nature of the sport? Does it include sprinting? Does it include deceleration, acceleration, change in direction? Does it concentrate more on skill related parameters or your health related parameters? So each of that, I think, matters more. And of course, if you go for like the field tests, they are better. Again, always you would know the whole point of efficiency and efficacy. They're two different things. So when we are testing, right, it is mostly efficacy because it's such controlled conditions. And we need to make them as efficient as possible because we need to see what the real world translation is into sport. So I think that is what you need to keep in mind in terms of testing. The demand of the sport. What is the sport? Vault, everything else, they are just luxuries to give you numbers to it. So that pre-season, post-season, you have like a baseline data, and then you can compare it later, right? So I think that is what an ideal exercise testing. So whatever is the sequence, yes, you may follow. I think there is an ACSN sequence. Every confederation has their own sequence of testing, depending upon which energy system is going to be harnessed, depending upon what the fatigability is going to be. Because let's face it, even for an athlete to do all those testings in one single day is not possible, because it is so much of work. So again, you need to be sporadic in terms of testing. You need to give them some rest. Then you need to make sure, you need to factor in so many other aspects also. How is their sleep? And now, of course, with so many clubs, there is everything is monitored, right from their sleep to their eating to their mood to everything, because all these factors would also influence. It's very multifactorial. So I Ateeb, if you know that ACSM, that diagram where you have athlete in the center, and then there are so many different contextual factors that affect the testing. So that is what I think.
But you have a sport, NFL, American soccer.
Yes.
So there you test all the four, like the power component, the strength component, and sprinting, and in a single day together. And they happen to be the most fittest players in all the sport fraternity, because they have a injury rate 100%. So they have the different mind,
Exactly.
So
because for them you do all the four together, because that's what they need together.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So yeah, that's what I think.
That's a very, very interesting.
If anyone, I don't think so. Like most of us have gone to the starting few chapters of the Kistner or being any biomechanics books. We have all those trigonometric equations. So just talking about wild. So they are giving you torque figures, right? You just take the movement arm, you just take the stationary arm, and you just add on the weights. You can just calculate the amount of Newton torque you're gonna get from the exercise. And you can just make a chart. You can make a statistics out of that. So I just saved your almost like 15 lakhs for the world.
Well, I wish I could help you with that. But I told you, see, it's a little expensive, so it's a little far cry.
In Pune, you have the most luxurious exercise testing lab, Abhinav Bindras. So I have been there. So like Tata happens to be my own investor as well. So I have my own company, Fit Indo. So what happened with them? He had a CSR of 25 crores, Abhinav Bindra. So he got all the fancy machines from the world, and he's charging 75,000 per assessments, like per person for the assessments.
I'm sure.
It's not feasible for any high-end athlete, like amateur athlete, to get through all those tests. It's very expensive. So even the cost comes into play. Like when so if a player is not coming to you for the rehab, paying $500 is such a big thing. You ask him for the rehab. I just think about the strength and conditioning, the testing, evaluation, and you like we being a physios won't give all such services just for $500.
I think you would understand that better, the commercial aspect of it, since you are in the system. I am honestly, I'm just starting out, so I wouldn't understand the more commercial, the more practical aspects of it. But yes, from what I read and what I see, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good and stimulating discussion. And just to summarize, I think Samar said it very well, that the principle of specificity should be adhered to during testing as well as training. And like Satyajit said, we should keep the test specific to sport, their particular sport, as well as the component that will be used for that sport, such as power, endurance, agility, anaerobic, aerobic. And I think that's more of a question, but I believe that's exactly what Vaishnavi and Ateeb were both.
It depends federation to federation. Just take an example of New Zealand. So they have their own sets of testing where they don't use yo-yo tests. they have other sort of battery of tests. So you get to see the New Zealanders are more fit than any other cricket players. And even be it UK. So UK have been to all the World Cup finals, semi-finals. They have recently won the rugby. They've been to semi-finals of the football, being the World Cup champion of cricket. So strength and conditioning and nutrition has gone hand in hand for them in the UK. They have very good, like they almost have a field-long strength and conditioning arenas. Just strength and conditioning arenas. You have few universities. You have a very good university, like Desert South Wales. They have a UG program for strength and conditioning, and we have, and PG program as well. So they have a dedicated program to this. So they have worked a lot, bringing all those like be the rehab sports in a like together. So they had a very good outcome from that.
And I think since we're talking about the UK, probably now might be a good time if Neha and Mansha are still around. If you guys can contribute what your experiences are, specifically working in sports, or you must know people who are working in that setup. Experience of strength and conditioning, if there is any.
Hi. So is Mansha here?
She is. I think she's still muted. Perhaps you can go ahead and then Mansha can jump in. Do you have your video on? Can you turn that on so I can?
Yeah, hold on. I am just in my room,
That's
but
okay.
I'm not very.
That's fine. You can just continue. That's
Okay. Can I? Okay, great.
okay.
So, my idea of strength and conditioning, because I've studied sports medicine, we did have a module which threw some light on SNC. So, my idea of strength and conditioning is always the basis of which has been form before load. So, when we talk about strength, I think correct form is the basis of how strong your athlete will be, and building up on that form by adding the correct amount of load. So for example, if you have a power lifter, you have to make sure that he knows the proper form. He knows what a snatch is, how to perform a snatch, and that's something that uh, is crucial to him performing the movement with weights on, with the load on. So I think, yeah, that's the first thing that I would mention: form before load. And I think another thing that's super important is that any athlete, no matter what sport he plays, has a wide movement vocabulary. So if you're working with a footballer or a rugby player, you have to make sure that you train him to perform multiple movements in a different speed. You have to make sure he knows how to accelerate, deaccelerate, and I would always focus on like training an athlete for deacceleration before acceleration, especially if he's into rehab and he wants to get back into sports after an ACL injury or any injury for that matter. So building a wide movement vocabulary is super important. You have to work on lunge patterns forward, backward, with maybe an overhead component added to that. How that helps in performance is you never know in contact sports how the athlete is, what the requirements of the athlete is in the sport. Okay, so when you give him these movements and you train him very, very well, you build a resistant and a robust athlete while training. You know that is going to translate into his performance in sports. So that is a super important thing that I would recommend. And other than that, like Vaishnavi mentioned, there are many, many other factors that goes into building up a good, robust athlete. Sleep is super important. Nutrition is super, super important. So when I was working for DSK back in India, we used to have a deadline for them to use their phones, because we know that blue light reduces your sleep quality. So blue light, yeah, so that's something that that we used to focus on back in DSK, because they were 16 years old, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. We didn't want them to develop that habit. We wanted to instill some discipline, and that is super difficult to do especially in athletes that maybe are, at an elite level. I don't know. I think Ateeb would be a better person to comment on that. But I think everything matters. Sleep matters, nutrition matters, their mental health matters. So you have to consider everything when you're talking about strength and conditioning, and how you want that athlete to perform on the field, basically.
Yeah, I think that was like a very, very good summary of everything that we've discussed so far.
We call it fingerprint movement screening. So
Sorry, Ateeb,
talking about the form and technique.
sorry, can
Hello.
you repeat that? Ateeb?
Yeah, so we have fingerprint movement screening. So about the form and corrective technique, it differs from person to person. See, if I have a long femur, my levers are gonna be long. So
Yeah,
my bar
correct.
movement will be so it's a like but your body isn't ever made to move into isolation. So you need to work on more close kinetic dynamic movements. Just give me an example. Like I worked with Puneri Pandan, that's a kabaddi team. So I used to focus more on isometrics. So you can't just predict like which movement I had to go and train with. So as a physio, we have that. Just give you an example. Ever seen a desi wrestler having that mugdals and just twisting around his shoulders? So yeah. So as a physio, we would prescribe him just do it 10 reps or 10 to 15 reps. Yeah, but they practice it almost 1,000 repetitions.
Oh, jeez.
Even yeah, and they have good this thing like good strength in the rotator cuff. They don't have any impingement syndromes. They don't get any supraspinatus tendonitis, but they have a good shoulder strength. So that's more thing. That's one more thing we need to focus. Like when I design a program, I try to incorporate all those my Indian style exercises, and if we have all those article nazis, then coming to us like we can't do 1,000 repetitions. The max we get is calcification of the tendon. That's a adaptive adaptiveness to the exercise, so that your
Right.
body so your body adapts to doing the exercise. So exercise prescription and repetition dosing is the most important thing that all the physio community is wondering like how much to dose.
Yeah, I think every individual athlete can have his own strong
Yeah.
own strengths, like own muscular strengths, but how that athlete uses that strength and
And
utilizes it in his performance in his sport is
Mhm.
where the expertise of these SNC coach and
Yeah,
the physio comes in.
if I'm calculating someone's 1 hour rem and if I motivate him, if have designed his program, if I have a sleep in check, my nutrition is in check, so I could get the 1 RM far better than what I have predicted. So there's a lot of factors coming in.
Definitely, I think you're
Yes.
definitely right. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of ways that we can
We
push
have a
an athlete.
formula for hydration calculation.
Oh, is it? That's
Yeah.
what is it? Do you
Yeah.
calculate the
We
hydration?
calculate the amount of the the urine output, input, and the demand of the sport. You have a proper like a formula for
Right.
that. Yeah, I'll share it with you.
Sure, that will be helpful. What we used to do in DSK, and this was probably the least scientific thing that we'd heard back then, but we used to check their weights before and after,
After.
and that's how we used to calculate hydration. Now, again, I don't know how
No,
like how accurate or how correct it was,
it's
and
mentioned in International Sports Science Nutrition Society. So it's far by right, but if you're going into the more like more professional or more higher end athletes, you need to bring something fancy. So we just have
definitely.
we have a proper testing protocol, everything PDF mark, and we like okay sir, so
Yeah.
please give us reading and everything.
For us, we could only afford like a weighing machine, and even the weighing machine had like many errors in it. So that's anyway, we did what we could with it, and in a way, at least, for the athlete, even if we didn't have the budget for them, they know, okay, they are checking, so we need to
Mhm.
keep drinking water. We need to
Yeah.
make sure that our weight post the game, post the match is not very low. We also used to do like urine checks. we used to give them like the color scheme, and we used to tell them, we used to do urine checks every morning,
Yeah, it shouldn't be
and
yellow.
yeah, if it was too dark, then we used to give them a warning. Okay, this is your second warning, and if it's the same color the second time, then you won't be in the starting 11. We'll bench you for the next game. So little things like that, you can work your way around it if you don't have the budget, and if you're not working with the elite.
Your performance,
Definitely.
like a sports performance, depends mostly on the sports nutrition. The amount of calories you
Definitely.
had in the peak week and all those strategies. Latent, we call it latent period, 6 hours window between your match and your the hello.
Yeah,
Am I
go.
audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
go
you
ahead.
have a latent period of 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there you
Mm-hmm.
decide all the energy sources. So I have all
Correct.
those because I have met Dr. George Gloston. So he prefers having more of the peanut butters and all sort of things. But I would
Okay.
prefer more of the simple carbs, and I would push more for the fruits, fructose before the activities and all that. So it depends, like player type of their choices and the doctor who is working around that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
if you
That's
want to,
interesting.
that's like a very fascinating field of study because
hmm,
I remember reading about the Indian hockey team when they had gotten a nutritional specialist, and there was a discussion based on high carb diet before performance and versus low carb, and does that impact, like for example, hockey goalkeepers? Does their reaction time change based on whether they have like a high carb versus
Carb or
low
low carb. Yeah.
low carb, but that's very subject to you already have your glycogen liver storage. So whether you have your carbs before or after the training, but that has you still have a stored energy form. You just have to prevent hypoglycemia in the matches. So they just hop on some energy bars or energy gels for that. See, if I'm an ultra endurance sport athlete, so my nutrition strategy gonna be totally different from what if I'm a sprinter.
Yeah.
And it your the strength and conditioning and your nutrition has to go with the energy system, ATP, CP, or be it anaerobic, aerobic. So it all depends on that. Knowing the energy system, and from there knowing the athlete, knowing the sport, and knowing his performance. See, if you're training Ronaldo and if you're training some random guy from other club, it's a hell lot of difference. The mindset, be it how like he could train coachable and how good coachable you are. That's the most important thing I find. Whether you are coachable or not, or whether you are try to use your own brains, Google brains.
Yeah, I think now would be a good time to probably, like, since we're talking about like the psychology of like your subjects, I think Mansha might have something to contribute to that as well. Mansha, are you with us?
Can you hear me? Because
Yeah.
I can't see myself, so I don't know if y'all can see me, hear me. I don't.
Yeah.
Yes, Mansha, we can.
Okay. Um, with respect to strength and conditioning, I've not really read or like learned about it too much in what I have done since I've done sports and exercise medicine. But I was really looking forward to this webinar because like I wanted to learn more from you guys because I feel like you guys have more knowledge about this than me. But I totally agree with what Neha said with respect to the form being right and then having to load people with, like 100 kgs and 200 kgs. I mean, there's no point loading someone with so much weight when their form is not right. First, injuries. It can lead to so many injuries because, I mean, you're trying to get strong, but if you're not doing it correctly, what's the point?
Also
So
compensation.
exactly. So you're not loading the right muscles and everything like overall. So yeah, I agree to Neha on that aspect. The nutritional aspect, I've done a little nutrition in my course, so it really differs again, as Ateeb said, depending on the sport that you're playing. If you're running a marathon, then depending upon the other comorbid factors or underlying conditions that you have, like some um, young athletes have diabetes. So like how you control that, and nutrition intake really purely depends on your health and the sport that you're playing. So it really varies and it's really broad. So you can't really talk about it, as much. So yeah, just everything is really athlete dependent, bottom line. So yeah, I mean, nothing else to add.
Yeah, okay, can we get in Vaishnavi? I'm sorry, I haven't gone to her yet. She's been raising her hand for a while now. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Right. Yes. I want to chip in with a little, I wouldn't say opposing, but a differing opinion about the form and strength. I believe it's a little like we're running in circles, causal, consequential. So you don't understand what's causing what. But I think if we consider form as a form of motor control or neuromuscular control, then that shouldn't come before strengthening a muscle. I think for us to get motor units recruited in the right fashion, you need to have more in the first place. So if we're talking at the physiological level, so yes, so I think form becomes more of the conditioning part, and the strength part of the SNC. So I think it's even named with the same sequence. So I think the form will come if the strength is in place and balanced more than the strength actually. So we
There is
have these
something post activation potentiation, PAP.
yes, right,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's
So
a term which
that's
is
more
same.
at the physiological
Yeah.
level. So I think once that is sorted, then the form will come. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. You could take it with a grain of
No,
salt, but
you are absolutely right, Vaishnavi. The thing is that, see, if I'm doing a squat movement, but that's not the exact movement I'm going to be doing in my sport.
correct.
So, yeah, so I'm just trying to make my body accustomed to such type of stressors. Like if I am in a rugby sport, so I have to get into any sort of aggressive stance for like all the pushing movements. So that
Correct.
movement, doing squat can help me doing that. So I'm just strengthening. See, you should focus more on the close kinetic chain in
Right.
SNC with
Right.
the dynamic
More
stability.
functional.
So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's more
you can have the
functional.
best form in the world for doing squat, but if it's not reflecting in my performance, so like I can just work on the variables like the strength, the tempo,
Right.
but it's very different from what type of squat also I'm doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think a good point probably here would be to just emphasize that form before strength, but strength contributes to form. So don't get focused on just one of those, but just understand that they both mesh together and they both improve the other. So good form will
Correct.
lead to better strength, and good strength will lead to better form. And when
Right.
you're training someone, I think based on what Ateeb said, uh, good form does not correlate with good strength, because good form can change based on the sport, based on the particular activity that the person has to perform. So just a good point to keep in mind.
And
Variability is the spice of life. So you need to include that in
yeah,
training. This is what I understood from it.
if you can squat 100 kgs, but if I make you do the same thing with the eyes closed, so there's something neuromuscular reflex training. So all these components come together when I'm on the field. So just doing squat, that won't help me in the ground. So I have to work the other components as well.
And Ateeb, when would you treat this? I mean, when would you train this neuromuscular? Isn't the whole sequence of neuromuscular is where you completely fatigue out the athlete, you like stress them out, and then you make them do neuromuscular exercises, because then they would entirely rely on their proprioceptors and nothing else. So
Usually what
isn't
we
that
do,
how
we
they
do
do
the
it?
PAP, and after that we follow the neuromuscular reflex training, and thereon we take to the strength part. Or sometimes we start with the strength, but if we're taking it at the end, we restrict it to 75% to 80% of 100 max.
Right.
If we are just purely working on strength, just strength, so we take it the first of the program and we start with 90 to 90. We take it to the 90 to 95% of an RM.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We have a good question here. Like, what's FRC? Functional range conditioning. That's a new concept by Dr. Andreas Pina. I have heard about it. So we can. It's very useful in a practical, like the lab setup as well as for the sports setup as well. Functional range conditioning.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Whatever you know, if you've heard of anything in particular that you can just point to, which can help us out with that? Because I've never heard of this one.
Just I can take one example of the swimmer's stroke. So how we can do FRC in that we can isometrically contract, and we can just start by activating all those supraspinatus and all the back extensors, the upper shoulder girdle, and just we do that movement while contracting till the end range of motion. It's as same as MET, but a modified sort of that FRC.
Okay. Do you
It's a very controlled movement. We call it CARS, Controlled Active Range of Motions. CARS.
Okay, so do you have any resources that you can probably share on this?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel by Dr. Andres Pina. So we can refer that. But I think it lacks a lot of literature on it. But it works.
What I understand is that it takes the movement of physiological level. I'm guessing you mean physiological range to strengthen. Does that seem correct, Ateeb?
Yeah, you first need to condition the range and then you overload in that condition, like in that range.
Okay, all right. So that's interesting. That's something which I don't think many people here know, but at least I didn't. I'm not sure about others.
Yeah, it's quite sensible and just the FRC, this is like very sensible than getting into the dry needling and taping for suppose.
Yeah, we've had a discussion on that, and I don't want to go down that path right now.
Yeah, that's what.
Somewhere else. So, does anyone have any particular questions related to strength and conditioning, etc., for Ateeb, or for any one of those people? I think Vaishnavi is asking, can we expand FRC again? Sure, Ateeb, go ahead.
Yeah, so that stands for functional range conditioning. So it's been so yeah, we have something. Yeah, we have cars that focusing more on mobility, but that's more of the capsular mobility. Like we have cars for the hip joint or for the shoulder joint, more of. We don't have that for the lumbar spine or thoracic spine. It's a very different concept. Like you isometrically contract the whole like the limb, be it upper or lower limb, and then you do the movement very controlled and a slow way.
Based on what you're saying, it seems to be based on the concept of neuromuscular control. Like,
Yeah, it's the same thing that has to do the neuromuscular control is sum of neuromuscular control and MET. That's what it is, FRC.
Seems like a hybrid of the two, basically.
Yeah, exactly hybrid. That's what I'm saying. You can't just get without neuro coming in anything. You need to know neuro in and out.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yeah. So if I have the best in the world, if I don't have the instincts to pick up a ball and like hit it for a 6 or 4, then it doesn't help. You need to have a very good this thing. You have few specific neuro training up there for such things.
I'm the happiest when you talk of neuro like that, because I have this very bad feeling that most people who are in ortho and MSK do that because brain kuch samajh mein nahi hai, which is really sad.
you need to know even your hormone. Just call it 5-HTP, hydroxytyrosine. That's what it is. It's a dopamine. So that's come up from a paraventricular nucleus. So that's in your upper higher centers. Then you have all those ascending, descending tracks. They all have a role in your performance. You have to keep that circuit firing.
Yeah, I think so. What Ateeb is talking about here is neuroendocrinology, which he was the only person that I have till date come across in my entire life who asked me for a book on neuroendocrinology. And it took me 5 seconds to process that request because no one does that. So that is just his personal interest. And the reason I feel that the fact that he knows about so many different things actually helps him when he works with professionals or elite athletes, because that's something which will help you when you communicate with other professionals. Because when you're part of a sports team, I believe you have to communicate with other professionals such as sports scientists, exercise physiologists, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning specialists. So you're part of a team, but if you can contribute to their discussions, you develop a sense of self-respect as well as get them to develop things about you. So yeah, I think Concesa has a question. I was
Yeah,
waiting.
no, you see, not in just a personal interest. I have seen all those who are at the top level, like from sports perspective. The only thing they had told me, you need to know neuroendocrinology in and out. You need to know the hormones. You need to know how they work. You need to control and manipulate the hormones. If you just take into some performance, exercise performance, you need to know about the hormones. How I can get more performance from a player. So there are like at least sort of 10 different hormones that's coming out of your anterior thalamus. You need to know each and everything, the hypophyseal system and all those hormones, the growth hormone, each and everything that's there in your body itself.
Yeah, I think we can probably have a talk on neuroendocrinology maybe later.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic. That's your forte. Always by. You can go hours talking about that.
Let's not go into that right now.
Yeah.
Specifically for strength and conditioning, um, there is, I think Ateeb has spoken in depth about CSCS, which I believe if you're interested in doing anything to do with strength and conditioning, I think it's a must-do course. And the second thing I think Ateeb spoke about was, I think ASC. I think Vaishnavi is also doing ASC. So I think I'm just going to pause this and I'm just going to switch over to Vaishnavi if she's still here and ask her about her experiences with ASCA. So I believe ASCA is the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, and Vaishnavi is, I think she's doing it currently or planning to.
No. I'm aspiring. I'm planning to do it.
Go with
I'm
NSCA.
not okay. Yeah. No,
So,
I'm planning.
the thing
I'm confused
me,
about what certification to do right now. So I'm
yeah, see, the
actually
thing with
the wrong person to
ASCA
ask
is
this
that
out.
it sounds too appealing, but the thing is that at the end for the level 3, you have to pay at least $3,000 plus your travel and just get a strength coach. And you get the same thing doing NSCA. The transcript is good. You have sports psychology, and at the end, it's all about the clinical practice. And you just try, and I know you personally, so you just won't be getting into that strength and conditioning itself. But if
Yes,
you want to go
correct.
into that,
I'm
Could
sorry,
you could you pardon that?
your video just went out. Can you just repeat what you just said, like the last part?
yeah. So if anyone who is thinking to make a career in this, the the most smartest thing he can do is he can take a thesis on that in masters, or else he can do a PG in this.
Um, Other than that,
Is better. NSCA is anytime better. It's a gold standard. It's like a ACSM of strength and conditioning, and you don't have to spend a lot of money.
okay.
Yeah, it's Australian dollars, by the way.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to Just
Yeah, $3,000 is just for the level 3. For the level 1 is different. For the level 2 is different.
rich folk. Sai has his.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Sai, go ahead. I'm unmuting you.
Okay, Ateeb, I had this one doubt. So when you compare sports physiotherapy with strength and conditioning, is the course in abroad it's extensive, like it is a 2 year, 3 year course, or it's just like the certification
So
thing where
1 year
you have
course
a
in UK. It's a
okay,
1 year course in UK, and you have a good Irish university. I met few of them in Mumbai. So they might come up with a fellowship or a student exchange program here in
okay.
India. So
One
I'll
second.
update you
Can you-
with, yeah. So they are coming up with a fellowship program from the Ireland.
Amazing, amazing. And
Yeah. So that might be a fellowship. If you are interested in to getting into that, I will suggest you to go with this thing. UK Desert South Wales.
Desert Southway. Okay.
They have masters in strength and conditioning.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, the Germany. The thing is that it's good, but you need to know the the language very well, and that's the more difficult part in getting the strength and conditioning like the course or certification.
Yeah, so the question is, could you talk more about the island thing?
Yeah, just a second. I have the data with me. Ireland. So I had a prospectus from the island. Just give me a moment.
Ateeb has actually taken a lot of efforts before coming on for this talk because he's accumulated all the resources for everyone, which he's very kindly agreed to share. So as soon as he gets some time, he's just going to send me the document and then I can forward you everything.
I have a prospectus in fact for that. So they have a university just for strength and conditioning down in Ireland.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. So they want to come up with a fellowship program as well as student exchange program in India.
Okay, so for the student exchange, what do we need to do? Like we need to apply. What is the criteria? Have any idea about it?
Uh, they were gonna tie up with our own university, but due to this corona outbreak, they got delayed. They are still in India, I guess. Quarantine. I'll share the prospectus of that, but I feel NSCA is far better. If we are not going into the population they have is rugby, so it's like a cricket there. So here we have cricket. So just giving an example, we need to focus on the rotational core, the syrup effect.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I think your network just went off. Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah. So just giving an example of a cricket, we have something called as rotational core, this syrup effect, SERAP effect. So you have your obliques, your serratus. So you need to condition, yeah, this the syrup muscles
Uh,
from
Ateeb, your
syrup.
internet connection seems to be fluctuating, so we can't quite hear exactly what you said. You mentioned SIRAP, and then the audio just went off. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, so we have something called a syrup effect. So that has the serratus anterior, your obliques, and your rhomboid muscles. So that's the new rotational core you have. New studies coming up. So you need to target all those. So if you target and train the muscles, you can get a better pull shot, or like the hook shot, or the hook shot, pull shots.
So basically, keep up with the literature, see what's like the latest thing.
Uh, I feel like there are two type of literature. That one you can just go through and that you can actually apply. That makes sense. So you have like the researchers that you just keep doing some or the other research just for the citations and the credentials, and you have few people who are just wondering that there might be something else like we need to explore that could be useful to our field. So I prefer going with those researchers.
The clinical and the translational researchers, those are good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what Ateeb is talking about here is the difference, like Vaishnavi had mentioned, between efficacy and efficiency. So something which works in the real world um, as compared to something which actually works in the lab. $1 million expression, Vaishnavi's comments. I, I know exactly what he is referring to there. So yeah. Anyways, so we have a question follow up from Sai. I'm just gonna unmute. Saurabh is next.
Okay, so hello, Ateeb, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to ask if you will recommend 5 exercises for anyone, like to improve their performance and endurance. What will be those 5 exercises? Like in general, like any general population for physios or anyone who wants to work on their fitness. What 5 exercises you will recommend?
First, you asked me about the 5 tests and evaluation I need to do to prescribe those exercises.
Okay, no, in general, like for a population
So,
who
see,
wants
you
to
need
work
to
for their
measure it to
endurance.
improve it. If I don't have the basic data, so I can't prescribe any. Say it's like the same thing. You need to have a blood test. Then only you can give the proper antibiotic.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So you need. It's very fingerprint. I keep saying it's very like person to person. It's like fingerprint analysis, the fingerprint protocol. See, for you, I can say that your body composition, all the parameters could be far better than what Obes by has.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Understand that.
so I can put you on a bench press, a bench program, or a squat program, or a deadlift program.
Uh-huh.
So if I put the same program always by, so you come up with a low back pain, probably a pec tear, or some other sort. Already he's
Okay.
having Osgood Schindler's disease. If I'm right, so if I make him
Yeah,
squat,
yeah.
he'll have a hard time walking, coming back to India.
Oh, damn it.
They have a very expensive transplant back there in States.
प्यार
Oh,
से
damn.
ले रहे हो, प्यार से ले रहे हो एकदम.
Chips,
No, but
chips का असर है.
that's what I'm saying. Why I'm stressing so much on the assessments, because we need to know where exactly we are. So we can't prescribe exercise.
Okay, yeah. Quantify it first.
Yeah. So if you give me a figure like you want to work on your squat program, so we can just work on that.
Hmm.
It need to be very specific. So that's what we just the whole life we heard about, like give me evaluation, but what sort of evaluation? We are giving all the evaluation, but it should make sense, like why we are giving the evaluation. uh, in physiotherapy and anything that has to do with exercise, there should be a clinical reasoning for each and every word we speak,
True, true.
because we
Totally.
might get very easily out of anywhere, but if you want to like work, build your own brand, you have all those intellectual people coming with why. They'll just bang you with why, and
Yeah,
you will like, okay, now I have to use my brain.
understand.
The only smart doctor, any smart doctor in the world, you speak up and they'll just get up and ask you why. Give me a clinical reasoning for that.
True.
So yeah, everything should be backed by clinical reasoning.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. Yeah. So let's switch over to Saurabh. His hand is up. So Saurabh, do you wanna add something?
Saurabh.
Yeah, sure. I think that was a brilliant point about applied research and academic research. The two things, right? One is I think we should definitely look forward to doing paper reading sessions here as well. I think it's super beneficial. We do this. In the tech world we call it tech reviews. Every week there's a paper reading session on the latest research that is happening, so that we are up to date. So if we could start that over here, that'd be amazing, and we could have some people volunteer for it, which segues into my actual question, which is, Ateeb, can you share how you do it right now and what are the best practices? Because I don't think reading up papers and practicing techniques is a mainstream thing or something that's taught in college right now. And it would be very beneficial to sort of keep, tell people how to be up to date, how to draw the line, etc., etc., since you have experience doing
So
this.
yeah, the worst part is that being a physical therapist, we aren't taught any of the exercises in our colleges. apart from the isometrics. So we have to dig down from all the basic exercises. So we have a book we have a database from ACSM about all the exercises. ACE and
How do you
ACSM.
update yourself? How do you update yourself, right? Like research
Yeah.
keeps coming up again and again. And
So see, there are two sort of like how I look up to. There is something ACSM that they have a good literature on it, and then you have ACE, American Council of Exercise Science, that take up the selective literature, and they have like a clinical trial sort of that. Like so if I have a data from ACSM, like Scott has improved such things, so they'll talk about this muscle, like just giving about the quadriceps. They ACSM is like they found a new muscle, tensor of vastus intermedius. So what that has to do if I'm training an athlete, I'll just consider that as a single component quadriceps. So like I go with ACSM, then I follow ACE for my practical application.
Okay, so just getting a little bit more practical here, right? Sorry.
Sir, sorry for interrupting. I feel this conversation, it's a very important conversation that I think should be had in a separate forum, specifically how to apply clinical research into your practice. And then I think we can have people like Ateeb and other experienced practitioners coming in and talking about maybe one clinical study which they've felt really influenced the way they think about and practice. So that's just, I feel we can definitely have a session on actual translating research into practice.
No, we have all those. There are few like general strength and conditioning. It's a good resource that you can apply in a daily life. And then you have JAWS PT. JAWS PT is much sensible to me in terms of my practice. So I can use those. British Journal of Sports Medicine is something. It's very like on the literature part. It's not on the practical aspect. I feel JAWS PT is like I can apply easily on my practice.
So just one request, Ateeb, maybe after the session, could you share a list of Twitter accounts, emailer lists, IDs on Facebook or Instagram, anything that you follow to get updates on the latest research? Because I think we need to start right from there, right? Whom do you follow? How do you get your hands onto it? How do you skim through them? How do you manage to go through a week? So I'm looking at actual practically, how do you do this? And that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I stalk a lot, all those intellectual people. So I start with all those MDs, sport MDs, the sports scientists, naming few, there are few Dr. Thomas and all those. And there's one more very famous doctor from New York, Dr. Michael Phillip. So he keeps updating me on WhatsApp. So I have a lot of contacts. Like I have one doctor from Houston, Dr. Angelica. She is an exercise physiology director at Houston, Texas. So she keeps sending me the data. So what I have done, I had made a list of all those people from all those different streams. I have contacted them. I have been spamming with my hundreds of messages so that I get their numbers, get their contacts, get their email IDs. And I myself made a group so that they all keep updating me. So what I have done is, I can't just go and keep searching for all those articles. So I rather go with this other smart way. So what I do, I know people who can just send me the literature I need. It's like a
so you
sort
have
of smart
crawlers,
work for mine. Yeah. See, if I go and hop on some research, I'll have to give hours and hours on that. So it's better I do the smart. I like that on some intelligent people who just, if they find it appropriate for me, they'll send to me. So I'd rather going and searching all, I go and ask them, do you have any literature? Who are already doing researchers literature. If I want to ask very specific thing about neuro, I won't go on the Google, I will ask always by. So he knows where exactly the certain literatures are and he'll send me few. And from there, I can just, even if I want to search more than that, I can just restrict to those topics only. So I prefer like doing smart work, like connecting with people. Like I think communication is the most important, getting anywhere, like in some good place.
I completely agree with everything Ateeb has said, and I think that
See, because communication is the best thing to be updated. That's what I feel.
yeah, I think
Because
that's why
I know more of sports, but there are expertise on each and every field. So if they share their literature knowledge, that would be very specific for me.
yeah, I think that's the point of this group to have people
Yeah,
communicate and talk to each other and not have to, like just have a platform on which we can share ideas and our knowledge.
yeah, because I'll only search a research when I need that. But when they are sending me, they find it good, so they had sent me. So from there, I'll start researching on that, or just study, or just restrict to that study itself. If I find it good, I have few references down there. I can go with the references, then I have citations, then I can just keep and how to always you can just highlight like how to read the article and how to like the references. I think nobody goes to the references down there. You get 10 more articles there itself.
So maybe what we can do is, I think we are really exceeding the time that we've set for this. Um, so I think what we can do definitely is have a session on each of the different topics. Like, for example, how to critically analyze a paper, how to get the most out of it. Then we can have one on just how to search for papers. People don't
Yeah,
know what is Boolean operators, how do you use PubMed. Like it's a very, very critical and simple and
and type of study.
type of study. Yes. So
Yeah,
something which we can definitely carry forward.
I
Um,
can just do a pilot study and come up with a okay. Now this is the only wonder that will work in the world.
yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work. I need normative data. So someone like you can like okay this study is a bullshit. But if someone doesn't know, I'll be like okay, I have a study. I have done a pilot study. My subjects 10. I can't come to any conclusion.
So let's not go down the research
Yeah,
method pipeline because I think I can probably help with a little bit. Sorry of that.
little bit no. It's your fault, brother.
I can definitely try to come up with like a webinar on that. But yeah, does anyone have any more questions for Ateeb? Like a final question? Maybe we can take one more question.
Hmm.
Just give it 30 seconds. Just wait for anyone if you're interested. You guys can put on your mics and just ask it directly if you have a question now. Okay, then
But
I
one thing I want to like request everyone, like everyone should be each like
sorry, your voice just cracked.
Getting,
Is that please repeat?
I want everyone to like being a physical therapist. We ourselves should be doing any sort of like a
exercise.
training or doing any sort of sport. So like we shouldn't be sidelined from our part. Like see, if I am a physio, I am there in the ground till the time of the like the whistle or something like. So we have to get as close as we can.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Ateeb brings across, and sort of goes well with what Saurabh
See,
said.
if I am jacked, if I'm in shape, so what that can help me, that can give me a field presence. I'll have athletes coming to me. I'll be doing more commercially good off my field. So I'm branding myself. It's just not about you being fit. If you are fit, you can make more money in terms of general fitness. You have only 1% of the sports people out there who can actually pay, and those are only ones who are like in like Virat Kohli or sort of players of that calibers. It's not that easy to access them. So you try to like work more on the general fitness as well, general athletes. See, we are like I started with corporate plans, so I've just recently done a corporate wellness program for Bank of Abu Dhabi. So there I got to know like how we can expand our practice. the things that you are doing at the clinic at the same time for the same person, just gonna, even if the best physiotherapist, you can get 2,000 bucks for that. If you're doing at a corporate setup, you can make 4 lakhs a day. That depends on person to person and how you pitch and everything. But this is something that we can come up with.
Yeah, just to carry forward from that, we'll have a discussion on how to build a corporate presence and how to build your own brand and how to basically pitch yourself and market yourself. I think we'll
Yeah.
start with professionalism series because I
See,
think
at the end, those are all the sport fanatics who pay you for the injuries for the fitness program.
yeah,
I have
I think
see,
this is
I have,
a good point to just yeah.
and if you get that access, see, I had trained John Abraham for his 2 movies. So, like almost he just because I have trained John Abraham, I got more than 50 clients. That's how it works.
All right, I think now is a good time to call it a day.
With a good question.
Yeah, let's not go into that, Saurabh.
No, no, no. It's very intimidating. Seriously.
Yeah. So let's all thank Ateeb. Thank you so much for giving us your time and taking time out for all of this. And I'm sure a lot of us have learned a lot of things. And Ateeb has kindly agreed to share his resources with us. And I'll be sharing those with you on the group as soon as he sends them across. So thank you, Ateeb, and thank you everyone else for joining us. We will probably be meeting again soon with Ateeb in a future follow-up webinar. So thank you. Thank you very much.